Hey there, my name is Gabriel, and I want to be an ecologist when I grow up. But for today, I'm going to teach y'all a lesson about mating rituals in the animal kingdom. So first thing we want to discuss is what is a mating ritual. Now, it's basically when an animal will go through a little process to kind of show off to a mate why they deserve to be the one to pass on their genes through them. And it's basically just gain the permission to mate with their choice. Yeah, so there are a few kinds. I'd say there are display rituals, dominance rituals, and then there are call rituals. Now, display rituals are basically when the animal uses visual kind of activities to display certain features of them, and as a way to kind of show off why they're the best mate. Now, example right here is the blue belly lizard. So lizards, there's the multiple kinds. They do this little funny thing where it looks like they're doing push-ups. Now, the reason why they do this are, a few kinds of reasons. There are, of course, showing off their territory, showing off how tough they are and showing why it's their area and not anyone else's area. There are showing off their dominance. Of course, again, showing off their size and how tough they are will just make it so other lizards and predators and things that might want to fight them or try to harm them will probably back off a bit because, they look a lot scarier than they just did. There are, will gain better height and visuals. Pushing up will just push their head up, and of course that'll just make it a lot easier to see farther out and above things and, all that kind of stuff. And then for last thing, mating rituals. This is really important for them. But so of course, like we said, and these push-up kind of features, there's basically show off how tough and how big they are. But they also show off other features like their colors, their muscles, their spikes, their horns, all that kind of stuff. And same for other animals that use display things like dances or other kinds of motion. And so in blue belly lizards, this is also primarily very useful. Also, same thing for a lot of other species, primarily with colors. The special thing about blue belly lizards, as you can insinuate by the name, is they have a blue belly. Now, not all these kinds of lizards have blue bellies. It's only the males. The females just have a regular barren belly that you see on any average regular lizard. But the males have a blue belly on their sides, and then the more centered part of the belly, they have a kind of dotted or line pattern, all that stuff. So this blueness is very important for them to display. Basically, the blueness of the belly, primarily the vibrance of it, and just how good looking that blue is how deep that blue is, shows off how healthy they are. The deeper and more vibrant that blue, the more fit for survival they are, and the more healthy they are, the more food they've had they are, or all that kind of stuff. That's a lot of they are. But the bluer the belly and more vibrant it is, the better they are at surviving, which means they likely have the best genetics for when it comes to surviving as a blue belly lizard. Now, our second one is dominance. And this is basically when two members of a population of animals that are primarily males in most species are fighting each other to show off how dominant they are. And the winner gets main rights. Now, usually this is, between two or more members of the male population of that population of animals. So, they're just going to duke it out and fight each other and kill each other until just one of them are left to be like a suitable mate. And, usually all the other ones are either dead, dying, or ran away before they could get to that point. So our main example right here is walruses. They just slam into each other and start getting all up in each other's face and stuff. They try gnaw into each other with their big old tusk and kill each other all like that. The winner of that is usually the one who gets to mate with all the females in the group. For the last one are the calls. These are basically when animals use different kinds of sounds or displays to show off that they're ready to mate. I feel like this is more like a starting it off, kicking off the main rituals rather than, actually showing off why they're the best option like we see with dominance and display. We see this a lot with blue whales, humpback whales. they're just a lot of whales and birds and all that stuff that just make calls to kind of show off that they're ready to have kids if the female is ready and stuff. Yeah, so right here, this is just, differentiating displays and dominance. Displays, of course, or eye catchers, are meant to show off different features of the animal and just what they look like. Like, attractive ideas and movements and all that. So, there's dancing, then there are different movements like we see with the blue-bellied lizards and other kinds of lizards with their push-ups and all that stuff. Yeah, this is usually just to show off their different features, colors, sizes of things like muscles or horns or spikes, all that kind of stuff. And then there are displays, which are basically just that's how they deal with, there's a lot of males, but not that many options for what we really want. Because, of course, the main goal of life is to spread your genes, and the main thing that's gonna really just stop that is natural selection. And basically, if you don't have the best genes for what you're trying to do, you will likely die out, or that gene will die out, and your family gene is just gonna die out. And then the one family that has the better gene is gonna just survive a lot longer than you did. And eventually it's just gonna be until there's only one with the best genes for surviving and doing that one thing. But yeah, so dominance, of course, it lowers the competition. And like we have the walruses and stuff, when they fight each other, either they die, get really close to dying, and eventually do die, or just never come back again to try and challenge the dominant male, or they end up running off, not almost dying, but just running off because they're way too weak to actually do all that. But yeah, and in between, just showing off the basic stuff that we see in this, their healthiness, like the male who wins is probably the healthiest because, he won and the other ones didn't. And then the healthiness with the blue-bellied lizard because, the brighter the belly, the more vibrant it is, then the healthier they are. The fittest male, of course, this kind of plays into, health, because if you're healthiest, that probably means that you're the fittest, because the fittest is basically the idea that you're the strongest, but overall in strength. You have the best kind of equipment, you have the best strengths, you're the fastest and the smartest, all that kind of stuff just plays into the idea of what fitness is in the animal kingdom. And then best genes, of course, that also kind of plays into fitness, because you can't really be the fittest if you don't have the best equipment to be the fittest. If you need sharp claws and then you basically have no claws at all, then you're not going to be able to be the fittest of the entire species. But yeah, so that's basically it for all the kinds of main rituals. And then right here we have our, theoretical idea of an animal that will use main rituals. This is the flaming kite. Now, back then in my niches video, someone gave me a little comment suggesting that I research some stuff about different kinds of birds that actually start wildfires to kind of catch prey. And when I, did some research, by the way, thank you very much for this suggestion. It was very interesting, and I really loved looking at all that stuff. It was really cool to learn about actual birds doing all that. But yeah, so these birds that are real, they're all in Australian stuff. They'll actually take on branches from already burning areas and bring them to other areas and start a wildfire there. Now, the reason for this is so they can actually draw out their prey, which is mainly bugs and stuff. But yeah, they'll draw them out and go down and swoop at them and catch them and start eating them and stuff. But yeah, the flaming kite, it's kind of bringing that level up to a higher level, and then doing it without the use of an already started fire. Now, of course, Australia is just, a dry area, a lot of bushland and stuff. And that's basically the same kind of environment the flaming kite is in. A lot of dry grasses and bushes and all that. And just not really much precipitation. Yeah, so these guys, the main thing about them are these kind of carapace little things on their wings. On the edge of the wings. So their diet is mainly made of, insects, so they can grow these a lot easier than most kinds of birds do, where they, have a variety of things like insects, fish, small mammals, and all that stuff. But yeah, so these carapace things are, of course, really hard, but they're also really fire tolerant. Yeah, and slowly as they fly around and are just living in their area, they'll collect kinds of rocks and all that stuff, and they'll just start gathering up on their wings. Eventually, when they need to cause a little fire, they'll bring these and start clashing them together, kind of like if you have two rocks and you're trying to make a little spark to get a campfire going for some cooking or something. Yeah, eventually they're gonna make a spark and that'll start a wildfire. And then they're gonna use their wings to try and like sway the fire into different directions and making little kind of patterns in it. And basically, they're just making their own controlled burn by themselves. Yeah. So now there's a few reasons as to why they use this. Of course, just like regular kites, they do this to, hunt down their food, draw them out, insects and maybe other smaller animals, and they just eat them like that. Yeah, so they also use these fires to settle the territory. Certain kinds of birds in real life have their own kinds of songs and different things that they do as their own species. And that's kind of the same thing for flaming kites. Different families of kites will have their own markings. Like certain kites might display their territory through uses of like square patches all around an area, encircling an area. Or maybe something like a triangle or other kinds of shapes and figures. Yeah, second use of these are for dancing, like with, birds, just showing off all their feathers and stuff and shaking that tail feather. Or they also use for, like, kind of dancing. I'd say this is to, like, visualize it. Think of, like, those guys in Hawaii with their big old sticks that are on fire and they're, like, spinning that around and dancing with them. That's kind of what it looked like. The third reason is they use these fires to, like, open up a little area for like a dancing ring to show off to mates. Yeah. And then for the last reason, they use these fires, again, like they did to mark their territory, making like certain figures and shapes and stuff. They also use them to communicate with mates and stuff, to say that they're ready to mate or they're available to have like as a courtship kind of thing, where they're not ready to mate, but they're like there, and when it's time for them to actually get ready to actually have the kids, as they already got a whole situation set up, they got the nest, they got all the food, it's like already done made. Then they're just gonna have to just wait for a time where it's perfectly right for them to mate and stuff. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I'd say for the territory, that's like a dominance kind of display. For the dancing, again, that's easily a display, a kind of ritual. Then for the dancing rings and the signaling, that is of course a call, a kind of ritual. But yeah, so before we go off, no questions for today and none of that. But maybe if you want to, I suggest a dance off. I'm about to show y'all my main dance, and I want to see if y'all can recreate that.